Hello, Think Liberty listeners. Welcome to episode 19 of Tales from the Shire. I am your host, as always, AJ Olding. This week on the show, I have Joe Bishop-Henchman. Joe Bishop-Henchman is intending to run for the chair of the Libertarian National Committee at the convention, presumably next week. At the time that we were recording this, the Orlando convention is a bit up in the air, so maybe the date changes, maybe the location changes, maybe it goes onto the internet. Things are kind of in flux as COVID becomes, continues to remain a problem all over the country, especially in Florida. But anyway, we had a really good conversation. I set out in these conversations with these candidates to try to stay focused on what it is that they want to do if they get elected into these roles and what their strategies are. But, it obviously morphs into a conversation, and it turns into a really fun conversation between me and Joe. And I really hope you guys enjoy it. Please enjoy episode 19 of Tales from the Shire. Record button here. All right, and we're recording. All right, thank you, Joe Bishop-Henchman, for sitting down with me. You are a candidate for the chair of the Libertarian National Party. Well, I guess not a candidate. Everyone has to be declared once they get to convention, but you have declared your intention and you've participated in several debates. Yep. What are your thoughts on, I guess, the state of the party, and what is it that you think that you can bring uniquely to the party that you don't necessarily think your other opponents maybe can?
Oh, big question right off the beginning. A track record of proven results and a goal of building a party that can win and elect libertarians and re-elect libertarians. So, I've been a member of the Libertarian Party for a quarter century at this point. And I work in Washington, D.C., and have worked with most of the kind of non-political libertarian organizations that are out there, and have spent my career working for a lot of them as well. And they all do very good work. Many of them do, and are essential and have a lot of wins advancing freedom. But the Libertarian Party is the only entity that focuses on political activity, on electing and re-electing libertarians. So that's the thing that we can do that nobody else can do. And so that's where I think our focus should be. And a lot of the ancillary things that are important and means to the broader end of changing public policy by electing libertarians, public education campaigns, putting on events, and so forth, and all of that. That all needs to be stewarded, and a good job needs to be done with that as well. But ultimately, we got to elect people. And my day job is going out into the states and advancing good tax policy and fighting bad tax policy. So I was able to put together a team at a place I used to work at called Tax Foundation. And our job was to go and fight, work with Democrats and Republicans, because that's who was out there in state legislatures, to get them to advance good tax policy. And we managed to do about $2 billion of tax cuts or avoided tax increases a year through that work. But we had to work with Democrats and Republicans because that's who's out there. And, I've been a lone libertarian in a room full of Democrats and Republicans. And I can't tell you enough how important it is and how much good we can do if we had libertarians at the negotiating table. Because the decisions are made, the room full of people is the median person. And if we add libertarians to the mix, that changes where the median of the final negotiation is. So that's ultimately what I want to see.
That's pretty great. What kind of so the big thing I take away from that, at least the early part of your answer, is elections matter for us. What is, I guess, your experience as far as being involved with the elections of the party, and what success have you seen, and what do you think that you've added to those events?
Sure. Well, certainly probably the success I want to point to the most in recent years, at least in 2018, the last big cycle that we've been through. And that's a win and a near win the win is County Supervisor Jeff Hewitt in Riverside County. And, he had a good old shoe leather campaign where he, ran out and spoke to voters and talked about messaging and talked about principles and what we can do as libertarians at the table. And he won. It was very close, but he won. And, he's able on the board of supervisors now. He's one of 5 members, and it's him, a Democrat, and 3 Republicans. And, he just needs to pull 2 of them in order to have policy. And that's awesome. And we need more of that. The near win was Bethany Baldus in Wyoming. She was running for the Wyoming House in 2018. She actually won on Election Day of the people that voted on Election Day, running as a Libertarian. She didn't win with absentees. And that's how we learned, the Libertarian Party kind of apparatus and campaign team learned a fact about Wyoming. And that's why half of Wyoming voters leave after summer to go live somewhere else for the winter. And so if you start your door knocking in September, you miss half the electorate. So Bethany's running again this year. It's part of the Frontier Project, which is an amazing project to try to elect libertarians at the local level in the Mountain West. And we're starting our door knocking earlier now. And so, it's not rocket science to elect people. It takes data tools. It takes phone banking. It takes door knocking. It takes fundraising. It takes infrastructure. It takes training, all of which the national party and state parties can help promote and help make happen.
Awesome. So I'm glad you brought up the Baldez race, because I was actually going to ask my next question and peeking behind the glass here. My next question down on my list here was, what do you think is the biggest race that we can win? And my assumption was going to be that you were going to tell me the Bethany Baldez race. But I think that one's a really important one. So we're focused on that one a little earlier. My understanding is out in that race is that the incumbent is not running for re-election, has actually endorsed her. Is that correct? Okay.
That's from what I understand. Yeah.
Okay. So then outside of that, are there specific races that you're looking at? And maybe this isn't information that everyone necessarily needs to know, but are there specific races that you guys are looking at the national level that you're looking to focus on to be like really the stalwart races for advancing liberty this time around in 2020?
There are. I think you'll have to ask me that question in another month or so, because right now we're keeping a little mum with filing deadlines still open. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the ideal for us is if we're able to get in a race that's one-on-one against an incumbent, either a Democrat or a Republican. And, a lot of people watch your show. I don't want some Democrat or Republican operative seeing it and getting tipped off that they don't have a candidate in the race. So, but the frontier candidates in the Mountain West are very promising, and I'm very hopeful that we'll elect some state legislators. We haven't elected libertarian state legislators in like a generation. You asked about like where I want to see libertarians elected. Ultimately, I want to see libertarians elected across the board, up and down, everything from, the U.S. Senate all the way down to the local school boards and town councils. I honestly think that if we manage to get 6 or 7 libertarian members of the U.S. Senate, we could essentially control the public policy agenda and prevent all the bad things that are passing. Mm-hmm. But in order to get there, you got to elect libertarian congresspeople. And in order to get there, you got to elect libertarian state legislators. In order to get there, you got to build a farm team, a deep bench of both good candidates and active people in their community and libertarian office holders at the local level. So, there's one of the great things about being a libertarian is everybody's interested in either helping run campaigns or helping run for office. And, all that's missing is really the tools and the organization and the focus and the resources to be able to turn all of that interest into victories.
Well, I think a lot of it is experience. I am running my own campaign up in New Hampshire, and honestly, I've done a very poor job at it up to this point. And there are people who've offered to help me, and I've just been very bad about finding it. I think there's a large lack of experience in the people who are in our party necessarily in just experience running campaigns, but also, experience winning, obviously. I don't believe I'm 28 years old. I've been voting for 10 years now. I don't believe I've ever voted for a winning candidate. I voted for a couple of winning propositions, but in my lifetime, I don't think I've ever once voted for a winning candidate in any election at a government level.
And, that's something that we don't want to lose. Not the not winning part, but we're not in this because we want to enrich ourselves. We're not in this because we want to, obtain the orb of authority and wield it over our fellow citizens. We're in this because we don't like abuse of power. We don't like people. We don't like people like that. We don't like people being told what to do and what not to do. And members of the Libertarian Party have chosen to be in the party because we're comfortable voting and electing people to change that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do to help close that gap on knowledge and abilities and training and tools. I'll admit it's hard putting together a libertarian campaign because we're behind the other parties on data tools. We're behind the other parties on being able to access volunteers willing to door knock and phone bank. We're behind the other tools on trained campaign managers and treasurers
and money too.
Yeah. And on fundraising. So, and donors. I want to be able to help create programs to close that gap on all of those things, not to make any state affiliate or make any candidate have to use this stuff, but make it available. So if they want to use it, it's there for them.
Awesome. Okay. So we're coming up and the state of the Orlando convention is, maybe by the time it comes out, we'll know what's going on, but it's kind of in flux right now. Yeah. But let's say it goes forward and it happens, a week from July 4th when this gets put out, and you end up winning. I think one of the first things that you would have to start taking care of as the head of the national party would be addressing all of these states where we don't have ballot access right now. Yeah. And of course, with COVID going on, it becomes more difficult probably than ever to make sure that happens. I don't have a list of states in front of me that are struggling, but I know here in New Hampshire, we are now in a situation where we're likely going to have to petition while COVID is going on. Like, who knows how many people actually want to approach us? So, like, what do you have any specific thoughts in mind as far as the strategies to address those issues go?
Yeah, no, we do. We've got a dedicated ballot access committee at the national level that meets periodically to go through all those. I was on the most recent meeting, which was about a week and a half ago, where we went through all of the 14 states where we don't yet have presidential ballot access. That's not all the ballot access concerns because there's also state level and local level races, but the main focus of the national committee is on making sure that we have a ballot access for the presidential candidates. And going state by state, we developed, I was just an observer, but they developed state-specific strategies for each of those states. So in some states, it's, we got to put in volunteers from all over the country because the time frame's so short and we can't hire the people that we need from paid petitioners. And we just got to get it done. There are some states where paid petitioners can fill in the gap, and really we just need to put in money and resources to get it done as fast as we can. And then there's some states where we're advancing a litigation angle. We had a big victory in Illinois not too long ago where we sued the Secretary of State saying, you are simultaneously telling us stay indoors, stay 6 feet from people, all of the different health warnings that are all too familiar to many of us now, and go out and collect a ridiculous number of signatures. And the judge didn't buy it. We got very lucky on the judge we got. The judge didn't buy it and cut the signature requirements heavily and said, if you were on the ballot last time, which we were, you're on the ballot this time. Great ruling. Couldn't have written it better ourselves. And we're taking that ruling and we're going to other states and saying, here's what Illinois ruled. are you really going to, be less accommodating to us than Illinois has been? And we've got a great team of lawyers who work for a pittance or free at the national level, who are kind of helping out states with these efforts at the state level. I'm going to get out on the street with petitions myself at some point in order to help some of the states get on there. And I'm hoping we can put together better programs to help people who kind of are available and willing to do that kind of thing. Because it's kind of an all hands on deck situation. The COVID crisis, I mean, it's been an economic catastrophe. It's been a health catastrophe. It's been kind of every kind of catastrophe possible. So I hesitate to talk about it as an opportunity, but we are using it to try to use it as leverage against what are already onerous ballot access laws and have now kind of risen to be impossible given the restrictions on movement and interacting with people.
Are you pretty confident that you think that we can get 50 state ballot access this year, at least for the presidential race?
We've got to, or die trying. It's really important. It's a badge of honor for the Libertarian Party that we're consistently on all 50 states. No other political party aside from the Democrats and Republicans. It's Democrats, Republicans, and us who are in all 50 states. And honestly, we're able to raise a lot of money and get a lot of media attention based on that fact. So I'd be very hesitant losing that for any minor reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, since we've talked about COVID a little bit, what do you think, if anything, the party's role should be in well, maybe not the party, but like the candidates? How do you believe the candidates should go about talking about these government shutdowns and things like that? How do you feel that the general public has received the way the different governments have, different state governments and local governments have treated the situation? And where do you think there are angles that we can get in and maybe communicate to the general public as candidates?
Yeah. Obviously, it's got to be specific to a location. I mean, when I ran for DC Attorney General in 2018 and was coming up with a platform, I set out to come up with stuff that was principled, good libertarian stuff, but that 80% of voters who I'd be talking to agreed with and supported. So I talked about getting obstacles out of the way of new housing construction, which the Attorney General can do. Talked about holding the head of our public transit system accountable for safety violations, which again is something that they can do, and expanding the educational choice program that right now is very limited but very popular in the District of Columbia. That issue set works for the DC Attorney General's race, probably wouldn't work for a race in maybe a redder part of the country. And so, you got to bear that stuff in mind. Because my work takes me all over the country, and because I'm an at-large member of the National Committee, I'm traveling all over the country. I've seen kind of the different experiences all over the country with different issues, and COVID's certainly no exception. There are places where it really hasn't changed day-to-day life, especially in like more rural areas, other than the economic impacts. And there are places like here in the District of Columbia where it's very different, where you do not go indoors anywhere without wearing a mask. Everything's kind of shuttered or on half hours. And everybody knows somebody that's sick or has died from this virus. And, that background of experience certainly affects how people perceive the situation and perceive the responses to it. If you want my personal view on it, it's, the Trump administration is basically totally failed at addressing this. I think they've been too little, too late, and sometimes too much, too early on all of their attempts at solutions. I look overseas. The countries that have controlled this virus have done it with everyone wearing masks indoors and everyone and having good contact tracing programs and widespread testing. And we've kind of never gotten anywhere close to any of those things, except in kind of isolated areas, and we're only still kind of working up to it.
Okay, so you bring up the contact tracing. What are your thoughts on the people who there's a lot of like civil liberty concerns that people typically have when the contract tracing comes up? How do you, I guess then what are your thoughts on addressing those issues?
Yeah. No, I mean, these are the kinds of things that libertarians should be talking about, I think, because the Democrats are not really good at offering solutions other than let's create a big government agency and throw a bunch of money at the problem. Republicans, they're just playing follow the leader right now. It's, yay Trump, yay Trump, yay Trump. Even if he changes his mind on what he's doing, he's still right. Even if it's the opposite of what he was doing last week. We're really the only game in town when it comes to trying to correctly diagnose why something is a problem and offering solutions on it. And, if we're going to have a solution to the economic problems associated with COVID and the health problems and, what scope of contact tracing, I'd rather have libertarians running those things and figuring out how to do them accurately and make sure they stick to what they're doing. They're not turning over the data to the NSA or whatever, which is, what I think will happen if Republicans or Democrats do it. So that's what I would like to see happen. And we have an incredible opportunity because nobody else is trying to solve this problem. Everyone's trying to use it as an opportunity for their own political advantage.
Okay, so right now we have our own presidential race going on with Joe Jorgensen, and in the last several cycles of elections for libertarians, we've kind of slowly gained more and more voters every single time, and to some extent that's us getting better, and to other extents that's the Democrats and Republicans seemingly finding worse and worse candidates every year to run. How do you? Are there specific things that you think we should be looking at when it comes to? I mean, there's candidates all over the board, but for the sake of keeping this short enough to digest, like specifically when we look at Joe Biden and Donald Trump, what are things that you think we as libertarians should really be looking at to try to make ourselves counter to them?
Yeah, no, I mean, any campaign kind of basic book to tell you how to run a campaign and develop the messaging. I mean, you go through your strengths and the other candidate's weaknesses, and then you look for opposites that accentuate your strengths against a candidate's weakness. And, when you put Joe Biden alongside Donald Trump and alongside Joe Jorgensen, I mean, it kind of writes itself on what our strengths are compared to the other two candidates. Fresh and exciting, and she's a doctor, and she's not kind of tied to years of bad decisions. So I'm going to be very excited to see what the Jorgensen-Cohen campaign messaging they're able to develop as they continue to run there, because I think there's plenty of opportunities. I think we're going to see a whole bunch of gaffes from both of those candidates. I think we're going to hear more stuff come out from the pasts of both of those candidates. And everybody thinks the American public is, divided 50-50 for the Trump supporters and the Biden supporters. I think there's a hardcore of Trump supporters. I think there's actually an even smaller hardcore of Biden supporters. And then there's a lot of people that are voting against Biden or against Trump. And then people who are just like, I don't like either of them, and can't we do better? And, that giant mass of people is our potential supporters. I think there's more of them on the left than there are on the right, just given the kind of enthusiasm that came out of the Democratic primary and the fact that the Republicans are incumbents right now, and incumbents are much better at kind of keeping their core together. But all of that you got to kind of think about as you develop messaging. So, like I said, I'd be interested to see what we end up rolling out. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to be talking about criminal justice. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to be talking about war. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to be talking about the direction that of the country as a whole, the corruption and the inability to kind of pass anything in Congress. So, that's at least some of the things that I'd be interested in talking about. But, this really does have to be a group effort and what the candidates come up with as well.
All right. Awesome. So getting back a little bit towards your goals of trying to become the chair of the party here. In the last several months, I don't think many people have been happy with the LNC for several different reasons. I think people have seen me voice my own displeasure, and maybe some of that was regrettable. I don't know. What would you like to see come out of our next convention, whether it be, online or in person, as far as what you want the LNC to look like, how you'd like the LNC to operate, and what can be done to maybe avoid a lot of what feels very petty, a lot of that sort of grinding of personalities going forward.
Yeah. I had a question the other day on kind of what do you think this was addressed to me, what do you think kind of the best feature of a leader is? And just, bearing in mind the experience over the past several months, my answer was listening. That may not be my answer at a different time, but for right now, I think there's a lot of people who are talking past each other. And, in a way, it's completely understandable. The incredible stress that basically everybody on the planet is under right now. I mean, people have lost their jobs. People have either, some people have gotten sick or seen loved ones get sick. People, can't go outside. There's a lot of people are under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure.
And it's not even just like the government action or the virus, but there's also a lot of there's racial unrest right now with what happened in Minneapolis and then in Atlanta, and it's not like it just happened, but it's boiling up again. Issues that are obviously very important, and I'll let you continue. I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, people have been like, we've been waiting for years and years and years for the promised solutions to these problems to happen, and they're not materializing, and people are upset. And then people on the other side get upset because those people are upset. And it's all very frustrating, but within the libertarian community there's just been a lot of people who have very strong opinions about a lot of different things. And I don't know, I feel like some people have lost sight that we as libertarians all agree on way more than we disagree on. And the enemy is not in here. The enemy is out there. The people passing these bad laws and protecting the bad actors and making the bad decisions, that's who we should be going after. So I kind of did a half in jest pledge, not even really in jest, I guess, that, I'm going to at least, attack non-libertarians as chair, more, attack them more than I attack fellow libertarians. I'm going to try not to attack fellow libertarians at all. It's not my style. I've tried not to do that as an at-large member, and certainly not during this campaign, because my focus is, there's so much more that unites us than divides us, and we really got to work together on stuff. Now, I think part of it is, I don't know. I think part of it is just the situation in the last couple of months. It's in a way brought out the worst in a lot of people. And I'm hopeful that, as that situation resolves, we can kind of move past that. Part of it, I think, is if we got some goals on the table that we can all work towards, fundraising goals, activism goals, lobbying goals, campaign goals, maybe that's a little less time for people to be angry at each other over relatively minor things.
Awesome.
We're too busy. So.
Yeah. No, I think it would be incredible if we could start focusing again. I think COVID has brought out a little bit of the worst of us. I think other things have brought out a little bit of the worst of us. Having more times on our hands is certainly not necessarily a good thing in that respect. And I think since you brought it up earlier about, when libertarians get in the room with people, we can kind of change the discussion. And since we're talking about the unrest in America right now, I wanted to bring up, Justin Amash is over there in Congress right now. And it took a libertarian in office to finally get a qualified immunity bill to be seen.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to find out what happens, if we get that second libertarian in office. What's the next really obvious thing that we need that we just don't have right now. But yeah, what are your thoughts on having Justin Amash in office right now and pushing forward that particular piece of legislation right now?
I mean, I'm ecstatic. I wish we could send reinforcements to him. And the nature of Congress right now, and Congressman Amash has written extensively on this and spoken extensively on it, is it's nothing like the How a Bill Becomes a Law cartoon from the back in the day. How Congress works right now is we pass these giant omnibus bills that have to be passed, or else, we'll have a government shutdown or something. And everybody has their little thing they're trying to attach to the bill. And it's up to leadership, a small group of the speaker and the minority leader and their allies to decide what gets debated and what gets voted on. And so if you want something to pass through this normal process, you got to be in good with leadership to be able to get that done. It's totally non-functional, and it's a big reason why nothing really passes. And if somebody wants to pass a law, they've got to go and get leaderships, the leaders to sign off on it, and then leadership has to go and kind of bully, bribe, beg the rest of the House and the rest of the Senate to go along with it and pass it. It's not the way it always used to be, and there's certainly better ways of doing it. There's a lot of states that still function better than that, where you can introduce a bill and actually get a hearing on it and have it succeed on its merits, yes or no. And so I think that's a big reason why you didn't see these bills emerging from Republicans or from Democrats, even though they may speak to it. And you may think that they would support it. I think a lot of Democrats are not big fans of criminal justice reforms because police unions and other powerful forces at local levels, they're part of that coalition as well. Mm-hmm. And so there's tension within them. And there's a reason why very few cities in this country, even though they're all run by Democratic leadership, are unable to pass these bills and unable to pass these reforms. And then, Republicans, for the most part, are just not interested in this. They view it as an urban thing, which the Republican Party is essentially abandoned. They just don't really have an urban policy anymore. So there is really no one else. And libertarians are natural coalition builders in a lot of ways. And I think you see that with Justin Amash. You see that with Jeff Hewitt. You see that with our other elected officials, wherever they are. We understand the left in a way the right never will. And we understand the right in a way, and vice versa. So the right, the way the left never will. We get the left thinks about things in terms of equality. And so we know if you want to talk to the left, you got to talk in terms of equality. And we know the right talks about things in terms of authority and tradition. And if you want to talk to the right, you got to talk in those terms. And we think in terms of liberty. Nobody knows how to talk to libertarians. So that's just our cross to bear. But, so that's why somebody like Justin Amash can pull together this tripartisan coalition behind this bill, and no one before him has really been able to do it. I think libertarians, wherever they're elected across the country, wherever they're elected at level of government, are going to be able to pull off miracles like that because we're not encumbered by this baggage that Democrats and Republicans are.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you for taking all this time to talk to me. Before I let you go, I got a couple other lighter questions.
Sure.
This is going to be airing on July 4th. We're recording a couple days ahead of time.
Happy birthday, America.
And when I record things on July 4th, I like to ask whoever's on with me if there's anything that they've been doing lately, or if there's anything that they would recommend for my listeners or anyone to gain a little bit more independence in their own life. Because, Independence Day is fun for the country, but at a certain point in time, independence is about yourself.
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I don't know. I've got a husband and a dog, so I'm not going anywhere without them. But we do have bug out bags where if everything falls apart, we've got food supplies and kind of whatever we need to survive for a little bit. I've always kind of had that. We live in Washington, D.C., not too far from the Capitol, which has been, pick your movie or TV show, it's been attacked or blown up or something. So it's kind of always in the back of our mind there. But
it gets blown up in the movie Independence Day.
It does. Oh no, the White House gets blown up, not the Capitol in Independence Day. Oh, okay. Yeah, good movie though.
Hey. Okay, and so then the other one is we're actually recording this on June 30th, 2020, which is the 50-year anniversary of maybe the greatest moment in psychedelic history when Doc Ellis, starting pitcher of the Pittsburgh Pirates, pitched a no-hitter after forgetting that he had to start the next day and in the middle of an acid trip, basically. What are your thoughts going forward then on drug legalization in this country and how maybe we can point to things like that where, it's not impossible to operate on these, different substances while trying to, talk to Republicans or Democrats about this issue?
Well, libertarians were ahead of the ball on this. That wasn't meant to be a pun, but I guess it is. We figured that out long before everybody else did. Our platform's been pretty consistent on this issue going back 50 years. I ran across some historical polling recently. It wasn't that long ago, like in the mid 90s, where it was only like 25% of Americans supported even marijuana legalization. Nowadays, you're an outlier if you don't support marijuana legalization. And a lot of states are rushing to the ones that haven't passed it yet. It's probably going to happen in the next couple of years. Hopefully that starts a discussion about other drugs. And rather than us us as a country continuing to treat these as criminal penalty problems, thinking about them as the health problems that they are. And as the individual choice issues that they are. I really hope that we can help advance the conversation on that. We have so many people in prison in this country for nonviolent drug offenses. We're building new prisons. Every time we build a new prison, there's pressure to fill it with more people. All these laws that we're passing, there's a great Twitter account, Crime a Day Twitter account, where it's just going through every crime in the federal statutes, and it'll take them like 1,000 years to get through all of them. It's the over-criminalization that we faced, and that the demonstrations that we're seeing right now are obviously a very important or very notable side effect of that. We're the only people that have been consistent on this and pointing to it as a priority for decades. And so I hope that gives us some credibility to talk to voters about it, and to persuade people that, what's in our platform today as some idealistic pie in the sky thing is going to be generally accepted views tomorrow. And so get on board.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you very much for sitting down and talk with me. This is the first ever interview I've done for this show over Zoom. Most of them have been in person, but, sometimes things get a little bit more difficult.
2020.
Is there anything else that you wanted to leave my listeners with before I let you go?
Check out my website at winwithjoe.org. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening to episode 19 of Tales from the Shire. Again, I've been your host, AJ Olding, and you've been listening to my conversation with a potential chair of the Libertarian Party, Joe Bishop-Henchman. I think we had a lot of fun talking about a lot of different conversations, kind of seeing where we are at from an electoral process and from ballot access process and sort of what his goals are going forward with the party. We'll see if the party ends up having an in-person convention or an online convention next week. By the time this gets released, a decision may have been made by the LNC. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, this is the July 4th episode, so I hope you guys are having a wonderful time enjoying all your own freedoms, and I hope that you're taking the time to become a little bit more independent and a little bit more free today. And I hope you reflect on that. It's something that I try to reflect on every Independence Day, not just, what has happened in the past to get America to be, where it is today and separate from Britain. But I really do like to reflect on how I can be freer and how I can be more independent on on July 4th and on Independence Day. And maybe you're not listening to this on Independence Day. And if you're not, and you hadn't reflected on those things, maybe you can take some time to do so now. Anyway, please share this episode with all your friends and family on whatever social media platforms that you are a part of. Please find Think Liberty on all of those social media platforms as well. There is a Facebook page for this podcast as well, that you can just find at, if you search for Tales from the Shire. If you really enjoyed the episode, we have a Patreon set up. You can just go to Patreon and you can search up Think Liberty and we'll be there. If you really like the episode, you can throw a couple bucks our way. All right. Thank you all so much for enjoying episode 19 of Tales from the Shire. I will see you when the next one comes out.